Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everyone.
On behalf of the
behalf
Kent, Renton, and Southside Chambers and all our boards and staff, welcome to our 2021 Pacific Northwest Economic Equity Summit. My name is Andrea Ray, and I have the pleasure to serve as the President and CEO at the Seattle Southside Chamber. The Kent, Renton, and Seattle Southside Chambers of Commerce have partnered on this summit with the belief that we can make a larger impact by working together. While our communities have a long way to go on the road to equity, we have identified three key areas of inequity: housing, healthcare, and policy. In the past year, these three areas have created greater disparities due to the COVID-19 pandemic. We are proud to welcome everyone in our communities to the table to not only discuss these issues, but also present solutions. It is now my pleasure to introduce my friend and colleague, Zenobia Harris, President and CEO of the Kent Chamber of Commerce, to present the land acknowledgement. Zenobia.
Thank you so much, Andrea. I appreciate being here today. I thank all of you for being here today. This is my first time as a chamber participating in this event, and I just want to thank both Andrea and Diane for folding in the Kent Chamber, because as Andrea always says, we are stronger together. Before we get going, and as we begin our gathering, I would like to respectfully acknowledge that our event, although it is virtual, is taking place on occupied Coast Salish land, and that the cities of South King County are on the homelands of the Duwamish and Muckleshoot people. We pay respect to the Coast Salish elders, past and present, and extend that respect to their descendants and to all Indigenous people. And with that, it's back to you, Andrea.
Perfect. Thank you so much. This copyrighted webinar is produced by the Seattle Southside Chamber of Commerce and may not be reproduced or retransmitted in any form without the express written consent of the Chamber. As attendees, you are able to turn on closed captions. Just click the CC button at the bottom of your screen and select Show Subtitles. If you are joining us via Facebook, you have questions, you can type those into the comments section on the Facebook Live broadcast, and we'll do our best to get those to the speakers either during the presentation today or after. It is now my honor to introduce Diane Dobson, President and CEO of the Renton Chamber of Commerce.
Thank you, Andrea. It has been an absolute joy working together with both you and Zenobia and our teams to put on this summit. This event would not have been possible without our sponsors, though. Thanks to our media sponsor, South King Media, we are broadcasting this event live on Facebook so that even more people are able to join. And we're also recording so that those who are not able to join live can still watch the event at a later date at their convenience. Thank you to our assisting sponsors, the City of Tukwila, Highline College, and the Multi-Service Center. Thank you to our supporting sponsor, AJAC, the Joint Aerospace Apprenticeship Committee. AJAC has prepared a video, which we will watch now.
Hello, my name is Demetria Lynn Strickland, and I am the Executive Director for the Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee, also known as AJAC. As Washington's largest nonprofit advanced manufacturing training organization, AJAC works with over 300 employers in the state of Washington and is looking to expand in Idaho and Oregon. We serve on average over 400 apprentices a year. We offer 12 occupations, 2 of which allow for youth as young as 16. We work with 8 of our community and technical colleges, 14 of our school districts, and we also work with our workforce development councils. We work with our community-based organizations, as well as other state agencies to provide this training. AJAC uses the gold standard of registered apprenticeship training, but also provides pathways through our pre-apprenticeship and our youth apprenticeship programs. AJAC has also operated a pre-apprenticeship program called Manufacturing Academy since 2011. In addition to working with dislocated and/or transitioning workers, the Manufacturing Academy is also used to provide training to justice-involved young men, justice-involved women, as well as opportunity youth through various partnerships. Lastly, in 2017, AJAC developed Washington State's first advanced manufacturing registered apprenticeship program for high school students also called Youth Apprenticeship. In this program, students can earn high school and college credit. They are engaged in over 2,000 hours structured on-the-job training with a professional mentor. They earn an industry-recognized credential, and most importantly, for both the youth and their parents, they earn progressive wages while in the program. Our goal as an organization is to provide equal opportunity and access in all of our programming, specifically focused on historically underrepresented communities. For more information on AJAC and all of our programming, please feel free to visit our website at www.ajactraining.org. And again, I'd like to thank the Kent, Renton, and Seattle Southside Chambers for hosting this event, and we wish you a great summit.
What a wonderful program. Thank you very much. And it is my honor to extend a huge thank you to our presenting sponsor, KAISER Permanente. Even before the pandemic hit, KAISER was making great strides as leaders toward equity in healthcare. Virtual medicine, prescriptions, mailed direct to patients, affordable and small package insurance, and all without missing a beat in providing compassionate care in all of the work that they do. With that, it is my pleasure and my great personal honor to introduce KAISER's Chief Financial Officer and Vice President of Strategy, Karen Shartman.
Hi, Diane. Thank you for that warm welcome. I am honored to be here, and with KAISER Permanente, we are really honored to sponsor this summit today. I'm also very proud to be the board chair for Renton Chamber of Commerce, and Diane, it is such a pleasure to work with you. I want to thank Renton, Kent, and Southside Chambers for the amazing collaboration that you have brought in bringing us this summit today. This is a topic that's vitally important, and healthcare is being a key element of this. KAISER Permanente's history is rooted in equity. 90 years ago, when we were starting out, hospitals were the key delivery arm in healthcare, and at that time, hospitals were very non-diverse, and there were barriers to receiving care that absolutely tied to economic lines. And even within hospitals, there were different levels of care based on ability to pay. And I am very proud for our organization as pioneering way back then when we started out that we weren't going to operate that way. We were going to provide great care to everyone, regardless of their ability to pay. And here we are today. And while history is important, it is about how do we face the challenges today, which in many ways we've made tremendous progress, and in some ways we still have very far to go. And equity is a key area where we need to collectively across the community make progress. Building more equitable systems that help all of our communities is a priority we share across this community, and I'm proud to be here today on this topic. At KAISER Permanente, we believe addressing the disproportionate health and economic impacts of the pandemic on low-income communities and communities of color is essential to improve lives and our overall economy in the long term. I am delighted to be joined here today by one of our esteemed clinicians, Dr. Kristen Kahn, who is really leading in this area. And she's going to tell you more about what we are doing in this space. One of the ways that we have pursued more equitable healthcare is by turning the COVID crisis into an opportunity to learn and accelerate our ability to offer virtual care and digital services to help meet our members wherever they are, whenever they need us. You know, today we have different tools. 90 years ago, inpatient care was the predominant way to deliver healthcare. Today, with digital, we have a lot more solution sets around how do we reach people. And we believe this will be part of how do we make healthcare more accessible and more equitable. So we are really excited about the work we are leading in this space. Digital tools can help us achieve greater health equity by offering new ways to reach patients for routine care and leveraging data to help identify gaps in healthcare access and outcomes so that we can target our resources to where they're most needed. Again, while history and intent are important. Putting resources into this problem is also vital to solve, right? It's going to take a lot of collective investing to get us to the future state that we need. So lack of economic opportunity should never be a barrier to good health. And that's part of the reason why we are committing $4 million over the next 3 years to directly support small business owners and job seekers in low income and BIPOC communities throughout the region. So we know that level of economic support is a vital part of the solution. And based on our social mission, our healthcare mission, we are really energized around the potential of that. Equitable access to healthcare and economic opportunity will be one of the key drivers of our local economy's ability to recover from the pandemic. And this mission is part of what brought me to commit my time to helping support the chamber. We are all collectively a vital support to the communities. As public-private partnerships will pave the way for all of our potential in the future. And again, really honored to be here. KAISER Permanente will continue to stand with you as we respond to COVID-19, and we'll work to provide high quality, equitable, and affordable healthcare. That's what we do every day, and we are here to serve you, our community. I want to thank you again to the Chambers of Commerce and the amazing leaders who are making all of this happen, and I look forward to this event. I will turn back to our hosts. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Karen, all the work that you are doing and plan on doing. We appreciate that work, and we appreciate the support to the small business community and the community at large. With that being said, it is my pleasure to introduce to you today a speaker for the day. We are joined by our 2020 Winning Solutions Student Connections, who are here to share with us their progress over the last year, providing low-income students with the resources they need to be successful. So with that being said, our speakers today are Josh Walters, Vishnu Kartha, and Sophie Walters.
Thank you so much for having us. This time last year, we gave a pitch at the first Equity Summit because we saw a problem in the community. In Washington, students from low-income households were falling behind drastically in schools, meeting grade level standards at half the rate of medium and high-income students. And there's a graph on the screen here from the state website that depicts this. We were just high schoolers at the time, so we started tutoring students in a low-income community near us. We found students who, if we had not been there, would have had no one to help them with homework. But when we were there, they started completing their homework regularly. And within weeks, were more confident and motivated, viewing us as mentors. We knew we had found something special.
So our pitch was to make peer tutoring happen in many disadvantaged communities throughout Washington state. And the audience here took a chance on us. We were approached by many nonprofits who wanted to help us out. Not to mention the Chambers of Commerce met with us every single month for the last year to offer their support. However, it wasn't easy. We spent months finding tutors and setting up the program. We found lawyers and specialists who help us make screening, training, and matching procedures. And in January, we had our first tutoring session on Zoom with 5 students and 5 tutors. We planned the session to be an hour, and almost every match went way over the time.
The school year ended just a week ago, and in our last week, we are proud to say we had over 100 tutoring matches. We want to show you a quick video we recently took of the students and tutors.
Every Tuesday, I think since February.
A few months. I don't remember how many months. And I do it once a week on Wednesdays. She helps me whenever I need help, and she gets a lot of my homework done.
My grades go up, and it not only help my grades go up, but it also help me learn more.
She's not a hothead. If you don't understand, she'll go over it with you. She won't get frustrated if you're not getting it the first time.
And she doesn't scream at me, and she helped me to do my cheering.
Because I feel like Gabby is my friend.
Definitely the relationship we have. Seeing her like all of a sudden kind of like understand and get it, I think that's really cool.
He's more open to math and happy to do it with us.
We just received the results of our first ever parent survey, and we were blown away. 63% of students we tutored stopped failing one or more classes because of tutoring. And 96% of middle and high schoolers improved their math grade by at least one letter grade, with science and English falling closely behind. Additionally, every student improved in at least one of the following areas: motivation, confidence, attitude towards school, problem-solving skills, and content knowledge. We know that these are skills that will impact them for the long term.
But it's also important to see how tutoring impacted the families of the students we tutored. In February, I spoke with a mother who had just signed her 2 sons up. When she called, she sounded almost distraught. She told me she was a single mother who worked 2 jobs and was upset because both of her sons were failing all of their classes. She felt she wasn't getting the support she needed to support them, which has to be one of the hardest things as a parent. But after a few months, she called me again, this time in tears, but they were tears of joy. Because of tutoring, both of her sons now completed their homework every day, and she didn't have to worry about it when she was at work. It was a sense of relief she felt because she wanted nothing more than to support her sons. And both of them show up to tutoring on time every single session, which means a lot because they would often not even show up to school this year. And both of them ended up passing every single class. But we can't help thinking that there are countless other boys and girls like her sons who didn't have a tutor by their side this year and can't afford one next year either. We know we have found something that works, but it's just a matter of getting it out there. So we need your help again. In our goal to tutor many more students this year, we're looking for schools and districts that are interested in partnering. We actually just partnered with the Tacoma School District, but are still looking for more, as well as nonprofits, childcare centers, housing communities, churches, anywhere where we could set up in-person tutoring and find students and tutors. We're also in need of funding opportunities like grants or sponsorships with businesses. A donation of just $100 sponsors a child, providing them with tutoring for an entire year. And we have a long list of benefits that a business could receive from a sponsorship.
Lastly, we want to say thank you for your wonderful support last year, and we are excited to hear the new pitches in today's event.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Josh and Vishnu and Sophie. It's been such an honor to help you this past year and see your nonprofit grow in providing more equity through access to education for our community. So I started tearing up a little bit when I was watching your presentation and realized I didn't have any Kleenex close by. As a parent also of 2 kids in school, man, this last year has been so hard as parents having to help our kids navigate the online school world. So I know in some ways it was just, serendipity that you were able to launch your tutoring program at a time when it was just drastically needed. So looking forward to helping you continue to work and be successful in the future. So again, thank you so much. It is now my honor to introduce our housing subject matter expert, Donald King. Donald King, FAIA, is an architect, planner, and educator with over 50 years of professional experience in the practice areas of community planning, design, and project management. He has specialized expertise in urban design and planning, design and management of community-based projects, healthcare facilities, educational facilities, affordable family housing, and special needs housing. His writings on planning, design, and practice, as well as articles on from his previous firm, DKA Architecture, have been published in numerous books and periodicals. Donald and I also serve on a housing coalition, Housing for All. And Donald, we are so honored that you have made the time to be with us this morning and share some of your insights. So Donald, over to you. Thank you so much.
Great. Well, thank you, Andrea, for the introduction, and wanted to try and get a presentation started here from my slides. Wanted to talk to you today about a narrower subject than just housing, but affordable housing home ownership and affordable housing home ownership for African Americans. I feel that with the challenges that African Americans have had and the historic barriers to home ownership, that if we can solve this for Black Americans, we can solve barriers to housing and home ownership for just about everyone else. Wanted to give you a brief on what those historic barriers are to home ownership for Black Americans. Also talk about the wealth gap and the home ownership gap between white Americans and Black Americans, and that obvious benefit of housing for improving the wealth situation of all Americans. And then a big, hairy, and audacious goal I'd like to close with, simply because I also needed a B in my alliteration here. So next slides, please. Oh, I guess I can control these, can't I? Let's see. Nope, not there. Okay, a little bit of a delay. So let's talk a little bit about the historic barriers, because that is significant in understanding what has happened in the past, to understand also why we are where we are in this present time. Let's begin with dehumanization. This has been a barrier dating back to 1619, when actually Black people were the profitable property, certainly not able to own property or invest in property. This was considered okay because longstanding beliefs that Black people are not fully human, therefore not fully US citizens, has shaped a lot of American policies, laws, and cultural norms. Disenfranchisement. The country was founded by these guys. They're self-identified as free white male property owners. Aside from constitutional amendments and court challenges, they set the direction of all laws in the US, including the right to vote on voting rights. How cool is that? You know, these guys had a good thing going. Homestead Act. This is part of what I would consider more missed opportunity than a barrier, but the missed opportunity was also part of a barrier to home ownership for African Americans. In 1862, the US Congress passed a law that granted 160 acres of federal land to any US citizen. Except enslaved people were initially excluded from acquiring the 100 acres of land offered to whites only. Missed that opportunity. Reconstruction was a missed opportunity by pretty much the whole nation. This was the first opportunity that the country failed to take collectively to provide equal protection under the law for Africans in America, including the somewhat myth-like issue of 40 acres and a mule, which was just a field order by General Sherman to offer 40 acres and a mule to freed Africans in America at the time, not yet citizens. But that really never happened. And a lot of myth is around that as to whether that should actually occur now. A payment or reparations for slavery. Within the time in the 20th century of the Great Migration of African Americans from the southern United States to cities in the north, the industrial cities of the Northwest, Midwest, and West, cities became clearly divided on racial boundaries, and those racial boundaries were enforced by public interaction or public inaction, real estate covenants, and over-policing and sundowner law violence, sundowner law policies and violence. This picture is not from Seattle, but could be. It's from my former hometown of Detroit in 1943. Violence was one way to prevent African Americans from entering other neighborhoods, even as visitors, and had to be out by sundown. This was definitely a barrier to the thought of actually owning property outside of your segregated neighborhood. Redlining. Redlining did not create segregation, but it sure made the highest and best use of it. Once a cleared cordoned area was established, financial lending insurance could be approved or denied on the relative hazards of your neighborhood as set by the US Home Loan Bank back in 1936, I believe it was. Another barrier and missed opportunity is the Veterans Bill for home purchase. In the late 1940s, Black veterans in redline communities were excluded from the GI Bill benefits for home purchases. This is all really in the context of African Americans who began to build community in urban centers across the US and really became an urban people. However, they owned very little property in comparison to their white urbanites and suburbanites. This made them vulnerable. It made them vulnerable to other public policies like urban renewal. Urban renewal was another tool to demolish blighted, redlined neighborhoods that were unable to receive public infrastructure improvements and financing for home purchases and improvements, expansion and repair. Black communities were forced to relocate and rebuild, sometimes several times. But generally, this has been until really most of the end of the 20th century and into the 21st century, those movements and those migrations have been within urban areas and within the cities of the nation. Zoning. Restrictive zoning laws were created to protect single-family homes in urban neighborhoods as well as suburban neighborhoods for moderate to high-income white families. Covenants excluded Black buyers for most of the 20th century. Gentrification. Gentrification as a barrier is really race neutral as a business model. But it's an upscale blockbusting tactic, just the reverse of what was used in white flight during the 1950s and 60s. In this case, white people moving in with greater wealth are now driving out Black people from their neighborhoods, from their traditional neighborhoods, once those neighborhoods become attractive. Also, the red line disappeared. Taxes, another barrier. This is a barrier that is in play for a lot of us. I'm a resident of Central Seattle. Property taxes have risen in my neighborhood as they have risen in a number of places like Seattle Central District as they attract more million-dollar homeowners, pushing out residents who paid much less for their homes and are taxed on the neighborhood's current valuation. All of this has really resulted in displacement for African Americans, and my particular focus is on Seattle, but it is occurring in other places as well as Kent and Renton. Displacement has, for the most part, had many contributors in actions that have caused displacement. But the trend to become a more racially and financially homogeneous central city is happening across the nation, and that homogeneity is primarily white. The Central District of Seattle, for example, was once 75% Black in the 1970s, but it was never 100%. We're trending now to more of a 100% white community. The wealth gap. The wealth gap really factors into all of this because for the most part, wealth is seen as the great equalizer of people that own property. People that don't own property fall much below the average wealth of the community, of the city, of the nation. This is a national statistic here that's shown. It's a graph I'm somewhat like a lot of you may have seen, as far as the wealth gap being of the bottom 20 income percentile. For whites, the average wealth is about $3,000. I mean, for blacks is about $3,000. For whites, it's about $11,000 or closer to $12,000. The gap is so large that this graph here, in its scale, you can't even see the top of the income and the wealth of white people, compared to the second bar of 38,000 of African Americans, and then Latinos at 65,000. So that bar on the furthest left for white wealth is six figures, somewhere around $126,000. More disturbingly, the Urban Institute reports that Black home ownership to be less than 1/2 the rate of white home ownership. The gap is larger today than it was 50 years ago. It has also been reported that Black homes don't appreciate as fast as white homes. So there are plenty of reasons for this, but the results remains. To be exhibited in this chart clearly depicts the steeper decline in housing wealth for Black seniors. This is in this picture, you can see that as younger than 35 to 45 and older, this decline of housing wealth is steeper for seniors, steeper for Black seniors than it is for white seniors. This means that there's going to be less equity to share with future generations of those seniors. And that means that the people inheriting those, the younger people inheriting homes from their parents, if they inherit at all, are inheriting homes that are growing slower in its equity value. And already there's not much left in equity as they inherit, which then does nothing to reduce the income and wealth gap. The Nehemiah Initiative, an organization that I helped founded, and really we began as a formal organization, as a not-for-profit corporation in Washington State, is beginning to tackle displacement and home ownership issues, as well as a number of NGOs are doing. But you know, we do have a particular difference and an advantage in working with the historically Black churches of Seattle, in that they own land. As an organization, as a set of organizations, the historic Black churches are the oldest and largest organizing body in the country for African Americans. For over 300, 400 years, African Americans have found their services, their social services, their organizing, political advocacy happening through the Black church. The Black church is also critical to the civil rights movement. Black church is also the largest owner of Black collectively held real estate. It's true in Seattle, and I'm sure it's true in many other places in South King County. Our estimates in Seattle show that the largest 10 Black churches have total equity in land of over $100 million. This really begins to ease the skids of, you know, really trying to find ways to provide and build and develop home ownership opportunities and home ownership options, and beginning to look at those and the numerous ones that there are, is something that we will begin to do with the Nehemiah Initiative of Seattle. The first half of this year we've spent on pulling together our programs for affordable housing development. We'll be spending the second half of this year looking at ways and means to produce housing that is part of the closing of the wealth gap by providing home ownership opportunities. This is a big, hairy, audacious goal. So this is actually big, hairy here. So this BHAG that I've talked about is quite idealistic. But if we don't really think bigger than we have been thinking, it's not likely that we're going to get as far as fast as we would like to in closing the wealth gap and providing home ownership for all. And I am saying for all, universal home ownership as a goal. If you can pay rent, you should be able to pay into the equity of the home that you occupy. This is something that we can do. It's something that I may not see in my lifetime, but if we don't begin to set bigger goals, we won't be able to solve the very complicated and challenging problems that we have in housing today. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Donald. So very much appreciate, your expertise and, again, clearly the ripples of the barriers you're identified, continue to impact our communities, and we must confront and acknowledge those barriers head on as we look to identify solutions. And we're so grateful for our partnership with you and your work with the Nehemiah Institute, and love that big, hairy, audacious goal of universal home ownership. So thank you again so much. I'd now like to move into solution finding as we hear from our first solution finder, pitch presenter from the community, Bernard Troyer of Facing Homelessness. This community-focused nonprofit is dedicated to finding solutions for homelessness in the Seattle area. Bernard, over to you.
Thank you, Andrea. I also go by Burns, and I'm in charge of construction of the Block Project, one of Facing Homelessness's programs. Thank you all for the opportunity today to talk about our work. At Facing Homelessness, we believe in the power of proximity, that those closest to the problems are closest to the solutions, and that our challenge with homelessness in King County is due to our limits in proximity to one another. Through the next series of slides, I hope to demonstrate what happens when we come closer and how we can solve homelessness and coming closer with models like the Block Project. Here in the slide, it contains a monolithic image of over 10,000 faces, representative of what's here in King County. I believe the point in time count was 11,751 last year, just before the pandemic hit. Who knows what it is now and what it will be like when the eviction moratorium ends and unpaid rents are due. Just last month, there was an article in the Seattle Times that showed that there's a 50% increase in tents across Seattle. Regardless, the point of this slide is to demonstrate when we look at an issue that it contributes to an overwhelming, powerless feeling. So that's why we invite people to come closer. Coming closer, here we see 112 faces, and perhaps you no longer see an issue, but people. And you come closer yet again to 28 people. And perhaps you're now not just seeing people, but someone there might look familiar and recognizable, like a friend, a colleague, or a relative. And then you come closer to see the one person, and here's John with a beautiful smile on his face. When we see the person and not the issue, our positions change from asking intellectual questions like that are removed from the person, like, why are you homeless? Or why is this person homeless? To what's your name? Or how are you? And in that moment, when we choose feeling over fear and recognize the person, we feel this is the beginning of the solution. At Facing Homelessness, we try to embody small with one person and one connection at a time. The Block Project proposes to combat homelessness with community, one backyard and one neighbor at a time. We are building permanent, supportive, low-income housing in backyards all across Seattle with and for community. And they are the most affordable permanent low-income housing model, is the most affordable low-income housing model in the region. These homes are self-sufficient with a kitchen and bathroom, and with Living Building Challenge certification, are the most sustainable and green buildings in all of Seattle. Here you can see the floor plan, and in this next slide, you can get a quick glance of the interior. These homes cost $75,000, less than one quarter the standard starting rate of $330,000 for affordable permanent low-income housing units in Seattle. The Block Project is a wholly grassroots and community-fueled project. From funding the homes to providing the land, actually building the homes, and providing ongoing support to residents living in the homes, it integrates our entire community. And this land is provided and by passionate hosts who say yes to my backyard and come closer in the most ultimate way. They're some of the most beautiful and diverse folks and range from single grandmothers to young families who are incredible models in this work in our community. They share their land for free with Facing Homelessness, who then preps the site and assembles the home in only 4 days to welcome someone without housing to become their neighbor. Our residents are referred to us from Mary's Place, Chief Seattle Club, Sound Health, Lake City Partners, and Rest to create the best fits for success upon entering a block home for our residents to receive professional supportive services so they can continue to recover from living outside. Our homes are completely prefabricated at the block shop in Georgetown by volunteers, and building them is accessible to all community members who may have never done any construction or swung a hammer or used a saw before. With our shop in Georgetown, we're prepared to build one block home a week, and our units can be completed in 6 months from a homeowner saying yes in my backyard to occupancy with a resident, and that includes permitting and construction. To date, we've built 11 homes and provided stable housing to 12 residents and plan to build another 4 by the end of this year. This project can only grow at the rate that community does. And we are so grateful for this opportunity to present this solution to you all to provide what our neighbors need most: community and affordable, supportive, permanent housing. Thank you.
Thank you, Burns. Thank you for sharing with us today about facing homelessness, but even more so, thank you for the work that you are doing. It is with the diligence, compassion, and dedication toward human dignity and coming together with projects like the Block Project and approaches like your organization has that can and will change the world. Donald, I'm going to go off script here a little bit, and Representative Entman had her hand raised, and we didn't catch that during your presentation. And so I'm going to call upon Dr. Entman with a question for Donald.
Thank you very much. I have not accomplished my PhD yet. I'm just Representative Entman at this point, but I do have aspirations. Thank you. Mr. King, I am looking at the Nehemiah project and looking also at the Nehemiah initiatives that have happened in other states, specifically on the East Coast. And so my question to you is, we have a limited amount of Black wealth. We know we hold it in these structures that are our churches. A few of our Black churches have paid off the mortgage, and I have participated in mortgage burning ceremonies at First AME Church, a community church that I grew up in and have been a member. I am asking if you are then wanting to take the equity from those properties to help build affordable housing. Is that the goal? Or are you going to put up that equity to help individuals buy homes, or is it both and? I just have this question about what was the goal?
Yes, Representative Intamin, it's actually, well, a couple of things is, yes, the idea of the Nehemiah Initiative or Faith-Based Development Initiative has been happening for some time. The Enterprise Community Partners has a program on the East Coast and have had it since 2006. So we're learning a lot from them. We're learning a lot from other communities across the country on how to leverage the asset of the Black church property. And most of our churches own property free and clear. So most of them have had those mortgage burning celebrations. This is a great opportunity to have that asset to be used in a number of ways. So it is an and/or. You know, it could be used as equity to borrow on to develop affordable housing and develop affordable housing as home ownership opportunities and a range of housing from anywhere from single family homes to row houses, townhouses, to apartment buildings and mixed use buildings, because our churches are in a number of zones that can accommodate that. We also in Seattle are beginning to use the statewide House Bill 1377 or substitute House Bill 1377 and the Senate passed in 2019 to provide greater allowances for land use for religious owned property or faith-based organization property, to where those organizations can actually develop more, an additional floor, additional area ratio, larger buildings, essentially more capacity if churches build for 80% of area median income residents. But getting back to what you'd asked, is that having that property is a big start for other NGOs that are looking at developing property, particularly property for home ownerships. One of the things they have to do first is acquire property. It's not something we have to do. So there is a great benefit to that. It does reduce our costs. It reduces our initial costs, and it gets our largest, as I said, largest organizing body in the Black community engaged in the process of providing housing that would also help them do well while doing good. Actually help these churches survive and thrive in central cities so the churches themselves aren't displaced. We've lost a dozen churches in the past 10 years, churches that in Seattle, Black churches that have closed and sold, closed and moved. Many of them moving to South King County cities like Renton and Kent and Auburn, and even as far as Federal Way. So we know that this is the case. So we're trying to find a way to not only provide that good in housing, affordable housing and home ownership, but to also help support the churches to remain where they are too.
And are we looking at other community partners like Mercy Housing, that I believe it's the Lutherans, I might be wrong about that, who have created Mercy Housing? Are we looking at those as models for what we'd like to do as well, and also to learn from maybe some of the challenges that they have had? I'm sorry, I'm really interested in the home ownership as a way to improve the wealth gap. I do want to say that I have loved the presentation so far, but I think we really need to be honest and use the term anti-Black racism, because that is a thing, and that is what is impacting and creating the wealth gap in the Black African-American community.
And I agree. And there was so much to talk about as far as barriers go. That slideshow that you saw on barriers is really twice as long in another presentation.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot that we have to rectify before we can move forward, and a lot that we have to set in place as new models. So there are models that we can utilize now as we get into this, but we're exploring new models and being more innovative, more creative to be able to solve this challenge. So what I put in the chat was our website, NehemiahInitiativeSeattle.org. I hope I spelled it all right, but if I didn't, you can probably figure out how to find it through the 3 words, Nehemiah Initiative Seattle.org.
Thank you so much, Representative Entman and Donald. And obviously, when we do our wrap up to this, we'll include contact information, for everyone as well. So thank you so much for the conversation. And Diane, I'm gonna pitch it back over to you to introduce our healthcare expert, Dr. Khan.
Absolutely. Thank you, Andrea. So it is my honor to introduce Dr. Kristen Khan of KAISER Permanente. Dr. Khan is a family medicine physician and medical director of equity, diversity, and inclusion for the Washington Permanente Medical Group. In this role, a new position for the medical group, she works with leadership throughout the organization to integrate diversity into all aspects of operations, building a provider workforce and leadership team that resembles our communities. Tasked with building cultural competency throughout the enterprise, Dr. Khan is leading efforts to champion and celebrate diversity and inclusion, sexual orientation, nationality, religion, economic, geographic, and other backgrounds, and celebrating the diversity and inclusion across race and ethnicity and all facets. Dr. Khan, it is my honor to welcome you to the 2021 Pacific Northwest Economic Equity Summit to share more about the amazing work that you are doing.
Well, thank you so much. And I am honored to talk with you all today about health equity. I am a family physician by training. I work at our Capitol Hill KAISER Permanente location, and I've been here for about 13 years and the medical director for EID for the last 3 years. The wonderful thing about KAISER Permanente that I really hope to share with you today is that behind our words and behind our intentions, there is action. And so today we're going to talk a little bit about what those actions are here in Washington and across the enterprise. And I want to start with KAISER Permanente's vision. We are trusted partners in total health. And our partners include the people we care for, their families and communities. That means you, employers, purchasers, and others. And as a family physician, trust is really at the foundation of our work, and it may be for you as well. So I do want to take the next few minutes just to share a few things that KAISER Permanente is doing to demonstrate that we are trusted partners. We'll focus a little bit on our response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Our actions, not just our words, to achieve health equity for the people of Washington State. And part of that includes building the future of health professional workforce. So to start with COVID, I think on this glorious summer day in a week when temperatures will be in the 90s, it might feel as if the pandemic is a thing of the past, but you and I know it is still truly with us. I don't have to tell you this. The effects are very real for millions of people across this country, including the thousands of families that lost loved ones to the illness here in our state. And if that includes you, I am really, truly sorry. It is commonly understood that the COVID-19 pandemic was able to catch fire and spread so widely and with such disparate and devastating effects in this country, in part because of the pre-existing inequities, the inequities in health, economic status, and social factors. And those inequities resulted in disadvantages from the onset of the pandemic in early 2020. I mean, it started with difficulties with accessing information about the illness, who qualified for testing, access to testing, the ability to work remotely or not, take paid time, sick time off from work to recover or to care for someone, isolating in the home safely, seeking care promptly. I mean, the list goes on and does include receiving information in the preferred language or being able to connect with systems digitally. And I really appreciated hearing about the work of the mentors and how they connected digitally with students in need. In our country and across the state, Black, Indigenous, people of color suffered, continue to suffer from the after effects of the pandemic at much higher rates than the rest of the population. And in our own region, Pacific Islanders were especially impacted, as were Latinx, Indigenous, and Black residents. And you all probably know that compared with white Americans, people of color also experience higher rates of chronic illness, like heart disease, diabetes, and often at an earlier age. And so this combination of pre-existing conditions really puts people at higher risk for complex, serious illnesses. But the impact has been substantial in other ways. Most recently, the King County dashboard shows that there's been a 31% increase in the number of calls to mental health crisis lines in April of 2021 in comparison to 2019, and a 17% increase in calls to domestic or to national domestic violence helplines in May of this year versus 2020. So those are enormous impacts. So what is Kaiser Permanente's approach? And our goal, of course, is to be a trusted partner. So our coordinated efforts really pursue 3 critical goals, but on this foundation of our duty to keep people safe. So first, we intend to increase equitable access to care and vaccines by removing barriers, especially for high-risk populations. We also identify and monitor disparities in vaccination administration using data to evolve and tailor our response. We've worked with employer groups to support vaccination efforts with their employees as well. And very importantly, our goal is to build confidence in vaccination. And we did this by listening to people about their concerns, their fears, their hopes, their goals. This information helped those of us caring for people to connect with empathy and understanding, with the ultimate goal being to empower folks to make informed decisions about vaccination and other healthcare services. You know, at the start of the pandemic, Kaiser Permanente rapidly scaled our telehealth services. And of course, that provided safer access to care in a pandemic, but it also extended access for people who traditionally faced more barriers, like not being able to take time off from work to come to the clinic, or transportation being a barrier. We also recognize that telehealth created challenges for some people who were either not comfortable with technology or had limited digital access. So as we evolve our telemedicine approach, digital equity is a priority. And in fact, we've developed a set of principles to guide that work here in Washington. And as we looked at our infrastructure for mass vaccination, we participated in the King County Vaccination Partnership Network to lend our facilities and our staffing capabilities. Because our clinics are located in areas where vaccination rates were and continue to be lower, we knew we had an opportunity and an obligation to build trust through transparency, to create a welcoming space and an invitation to residents. Our Federal Way vaccination site hosted a community tour so that local leaders could see the space, engage in dialogue with us, and then we could also learn from those community leaders and our patients about their needs. Because we are committed to total health, you know, those 15 minutes you had to wait after your COVID vaccination, well, we took advantage of that time by addressing patient care needs. And that included scheduling life-saving screening tests like mammograms for our members during those 15 minutes, or handing out colon cancer screening tests, or administering eye exams to folks with diabetes. You know, these are standard preventive care recommendations, and they save lives and preserve good health. And as we've consolidated vaccine locations with decline for vaccines, or with the demand for vaccines in decline, We have continued to offer those evening hours so that we can accommodate folks for whom coming to the clinic is a challenge. So what comes next? Vaccines are a critical step, but they will not end systemic injustice. As a result of the pandemic, many people deferred care, including those important preventive care screening tests that I've mentioned. And we are working to ensure that folks have easy access to those tests and services now that they're leaving the homes and pursuing these things. But more broadly, collectively, and that is why we are so happy to be here with you all today, we need to improve the conditions where people live, work, and play. And that is work we all have a role in. Within KP, we have committed to our whole person approach to health, addressing not only physical but emotional health and the social factors that contribute to both. We're launching more proactive screening for social health needs and connecting people to services to support them. We're also looking at data critically, disaggregating it by demographic factors, and identifying differences across groups. That way we can ask, why does this difference in screening exist between groups? Why does this disparity exist? And what are we going to do differently to overcome it, both within our four walls and in collaboration with you, our community partners, public health, and others? At Kaiser Permanente, we're applying the lessons that we've learned from our vaccine equity efforts to develop a more equitable recovery from the pandemic. And that includes the economic recovery. In the Black community, our commitment to recovery is substantial, connecting small businesses to capital and training programs. In fact, Kaiser Permanente has committed about $45 million in grants, ultimately helping Black-owned businesses prosper. We're also committing to community-based organizations that are confronting structural racism, discrimination, and trauma. We're helping them to scale those racial equity projects, practices, and campaigns with grants that ensure a more just society and healthier communities. And we're improving our social health, expanding our screening, as I mentioned before, identifying the needs of our members, and connecting them to services through our Thrive Local program. And then lastly, I want to talk a little bit about our workforce. We know a diverse workforce is better able to meet the needs of a diverse population, which is why we're creating partnerships with other community organizations to create a statewide structure that supports Black students and students of color to prepare them for careers in healthcare, specifically in health professional programs. And we've created formalized student clinician mentorship programs to support these students and encourage them, because so many of us benefited from the encouragement of others during our journeys. And lastly, we have a medical assistant apprenticeship program, which is vitally effective in supporting students while they're in school with paid apprenticeship programs. And this directly addresses a staffing gap that we have and a need for communities as well. So KP's vision is to be a trusted partner. We know that there is still so far to go to achieve health equity in our region and across the country, but we feel that we are standing on a legacy that goes back more than 90 years and one that values doing the right thing as a trusted partner in total health. So thank you so much for your time. It's an honor to talk with you all today.
Dr. Khan, thank you. Thank you for all that you have shared today. And thank you for the work that Kaiser Permanente continues to do and the leadership you provide toward equity in healthcare. I would be remiss to not take the opportunity to thank you and every person on the Kaiser teams, as well as the families who share their time with you for the benefit of our community, to thank you for the frontline service you have provided in saving lives during this pandemic. Thank you. It is now my honor to introduce our next pitch presenter, Andrea Connors of the Patient Empowerment Network.
Hi, everybody. It's It's such a pleasure to be here with you today. Good afternoon, and thank you so much, Diane, for the opportunity to be here. We want to extend a big thank you to the Kent, Renton, and Seattle Southside Chambers for inviting us to be here. As a Washington nonprofit, it's really an honor to pitch our program at this year's Equity Summit. I'd also like to thank Dr. Khan for so beautifully setting the context for what I'd like to talk with you about today. Oh, there we are. So I wanted to start very briefly by introducing you to our organization, Patient Empowerment Network, also known as PEN, P-E-N. PEN is the cancer advocacy organization dedicated to improving health literacy and treatment outcomes for cancer patients and care partners at every step of their cancer journey. What differentiates us, or PEN, from other cancer advocacy groups is that we take health literacy a step further. So our free online resources educate and then activate cancer patients and their care partners to become co-decision makers with their healthcare teams. By insisting on the most current and personalized care available, empowered patients achieve better treatment outcomes. And supporting this for all patients is at the heart of everything we do. So I like to say that PEN was virtual before virtual was cool, or at least the norm as it is today. So we currently provide, and have for many years, the majority of our programs online via webcasts, videos, downloadable resources and guides, as well as via social media and other digital platforms. However, research suggests, and our own experience certainly validates, that many older cancer patients and care partners, as well as those without consistent access to technology, lack basic internet and social media skills. This creates a vast obstacle when they attempt to access telemedicine visits, find information about their illness, and seek support for themselves and their families. Often they become overwhelmed with the abundance of information that they find online and don't know how or where to find help. And very importantly, many struggle with how to identify credible sources of information. So to truly empower cancer patients, it's critically important that everyone is able to access the multitude of resources available online. And so we set out to bridge the digital divide and empower people, the people we serve, with the skills they need to be tech savvy, or at very least, able to utilize technology to their advantage during their cancer journey. So in 2016, we launched the first digital Sherpa workshops to try to tackle digital literacy among cancer patients. The program takes many forms and we've evolved it over time, but generally program participants meet with university students who have been specifically trained at digital Sherpas. So as you can see from the pictures on this slide, which are from actual digital Sherpa workshops, what always strikes me is how incredibly heartwarming and impactful these workshops are, because they allow two generations to come together and have fun in each other's company while learning valuable skills. It's truly a win-win for everybody. The students learn they can make a tangible difference in another person's life with the technology they already have, and the patients and care partners learn how to empower themselves through the use of technology. The workshops are based on a curriculum we developed based on the needs we've identified within the communities we serve. Topics we teach at regular workshops include, for example, how to access the internet, identifying credible resources and websites, the benefits of using your patient portal, and how to effectively utilize telemedicine. So though we're incredibly proud, and I should mention that to date, I mentioned we launched in 2016, to date, the Digital Sherpa program has empowered more than 5,000 cancer patients and care partners. And though we're incredibly proud to have reached so many people, we recognize that it's just the tip of the iceberg of what would be possible if we engaged with new partners in our work. Additionally, the challenges placed on cancer patients and care partners by the COVID-19 pandemic have made digital literacy skills more essential in 2021 than perhaps they've ever been before. That's why we're proposing a Train the Trainers initiative for Penn's Digital Sherpa program, which will provide a sustainable and replicable solution to this health equity divide by equipping locally focused nonprofits to deliver these workshops to their communities. The Digital Sherpa Train the Trainers initiative will primarily be focused on serving the most vulnerable individuals, particularly those living in rural areas and older adults. To reach underserved patients and their care partners in Washington, Penn will provide microgrants, as well as, very importantly, personalized training to regional partner organizations to build their capacity to deliver virtual programming and facilitate Digital Sherpa workshops, online or in person, whenever and however their communities need it the most. We feel it's really that flexibility that will take this program to the next level. So having operated virtually for more than a decade, Penn is uniquely positioned to train other nonprofits to deliver the Digital Sherpa program. And I'm very excited to report that we have some seed funding to start moving Digital Sherpa Train the Trainers forward. So if you'd like to learn more about Penn and the Digital Sherpa program, please visit us on our website or connect with us on social media. And I'll definitely put the information in the chat right now. Thanks so much, everyone. I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate that presentation. And really appreciate the conversation. So thank you. I do see that there are a couple people who have had their hands raised, and we should have time to get to you once we get to our voting deliberation section. So again, appreciate everybody's patience. And now it's my honor to introduce our next speaker, Representative Deborah Entenman. State Representative Entenman is a former non-traditional student who is passionate about education for people of all ages and stages of life. As the daughter of a Seattle teacher, Deborah believes in helping people reach their goals by advocating for programs that lift families out of hopelessness and enable them to succeed. She benefited from that type of advocacy as an inaugural member of the Seattle King County Head Start program, where she began her love of education. Representative Entenman went back to school after her own children were ready to enter college. At Highline Community College and Seattle University, she studied political science and went on to serve as district director for Congressman Adam Smith, where I first had the pleasure to meet you, Representative Entenman. And she was appointed to the Board of Trustees at Renton Technical College in 2015. Deborah, we're so grateful that you can come and speak to us today about policy, and thank you for being here. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'd like to thank the Renton, Kent, and South Sound Chamber for the opportunity to speak today about public policy and how important it is if we want to make long-term change. And I also want to say that I appreciate the presentations that were made here today. And I think that they are really good examples of how people can have wonderful intentions, but I'm wondering if they have thought about asking the people which they would like to serve if what the programs do are helpful. And the reason why I ask this is not a criticism of the intent, but it is a criticism of the outcome. For example, we have young people who I assume have come from communities of affluence and have decided that they wanted to help quote unquote low-income children during the time when we were accessing education using digital structures. If a child does not have a computer or access to broadband, how are they accessing your services? That's the question that I had about the first presentation. I was able to ask my question about the second presentation, and then we get to a presentation from KAISER Permanente. In full disclosure, I am a subscriber to KAISER, but I asked the question about who are you contracting with? If you want to help small businesses, I want KAISER to think about contracting with small businesses to cups and paper and toilet paper and all of those things that could help build wealth in communities of color. When I think about the last program called Digital Sherpa, I think about the fact that we have many older African-American people who don't have computers, who don't have access to the services. And I even think about the name of the organization. I understand that Sherpa means helper, but I really do think it's culturally incompetent to use the term Sherpa in your business. And so that might be something that you want to reconsider. As I talk about policy as a legislator, we have to do a number of things. We can sometimes have good ideas on our own, and we can often have good ideas brought to us by members of the community. That includes lobbyists, other legislators, and advocacy groups. Everybody, for me anyway, has the opportunity to come and make a presentation about what they would like to do and what they would like to see happen in the legislature. But when we talk about making good public policy, we have to ask the question, one, is it going to be a positive influence on the legislative process, or will it be a negative influence on the legislative process? In other words, will this be a good law or a bad law? Because sometimes we want to prevent bad laws. And that is also very important when we think about policy. Earlier, I talked about anti-Black racism. And if you look at the history of the Washington State Legislature, you can see that some of the policies that we put in place had to do with biases that we had against African American Black people and Native people. We decided that their children should be taken out of their homes because they would have a better learning experience and grow up in a better environment if they were not being raised by their family members. We are now trying to undo that historical damage that we have done to African American and Indigenous families. These were policies, these were laws. We know now that those policies and those laws were not good policies and laws. And I have spent time in my legislative career in the last 4 years trying to undo some of those laws when we think about the work that we have done to reform TANF. Other work that I have done when we talk about public policy is working on issues around police accountability. As a member of the state legislature, it was brought to my attention over a number of incidents that we saw happen before the unfortunate death of George Floyd, that policing in the United States of America and in Washington State and in King County and in the communities in which I represent were not fair. We had a number of incidents where specifically African American and Indigenous people lost their lives at the hands of the police. So as a member of the legislature, I am looking at what is the policy that I can change so I can, one, hold law enforcement hold law enforcement accountable, while at the same time understanding that we still need a police force for some things. Many people are talking about defund the police. My idea is to simply take some of the responsibilities that we have given to police and put them where they belong, which is in the behavioral health setting. So we are reimagining what policing should be like in Washington State. Other policies that we have worked on is to make policing consistent throughout the state. So it shouldn't matter if I get stopped by the police in Spokane or if I get stopped by the police in Auburn. Police should be trained to treat me the same way based on the law, not on what they think about me as an African American person. Earlier, I spoke about anti-Black racism. Many of us want to talk about equity, but we don't want to talk about racism. I think that there are times when we have this idea that equity means everybody will be giving the same thing. And I would like to think about it in this way. I wear a size 8 shoe. If everybody is homeless, They do not all wear a size 8 shoe. So that is not what they need. That would be a definition of equality. If we want equity, we need to look at the person who is without shoes and find out what size shoe they need, and even ask them what kind of shoe would be comfortable. And it is in that same way that when we are working on policy, we need to talk to people both impacted by police policy, people who are police officers, and people who have really never engaged with police. We all need to sit down and have those conversations. Over the last summer previous to this, that is what I did as a part of a task force that was put together by the governor. The conversations weren't always easy. We did have to stop as a part of the policy and really talk about bias and anti-Black racism that we see in our systems, especially our system of policing in America. Those conversations were not easy. I did not expect them to be. They were very challenging, but they were really important. And whatever group you are in, if you are talking about making policy that is going to impact people, it is most important that you speak with those people first. I want to say again, it is most important that you speak with those people first to see what they need, to ask them what would be most helpful. I know that during the summer, I worked with Sharon Navas and others on a digital equity plan. We originally were told that there are about 7,000 students in Washington state that didn't have access to computers or access to the internet, one or the other, sometimes both. What we learned in our investigation was that there were approximately 250,000 students all over Washington state that either didn't have access to a computer, didn't have access to internet, or didn't have access to both. One of the failings that we learned about was people were sent an email asking them if they had a device in which they could get on the internet. Now think about that. I have a phone and many of us do. So we have a device in which we can get on the internet. That might be helpful if I want to look at Facebook, but I could not have a student doing their homework on my phone. So the questions that we are asking and how we are asking the questions when we are making policy are really important. For example, sending out a letter to parents asking about digital devices may have gotten a greater response, may have gotten a greater, more varied response, may have helped the Office of the Superintendent in Public Instruction really know who it was that we needed to help in this time of COVID. That was a lesson learned. Now we know that we need to send information in the mail. You can't ask someone about digital access through digital access. I know it seems simple, but that is a policy that we had to think about and that we had to change. And so when I go back to when I think about public policy overall, the thing that I have learned and the thing that I would like to share with you today is this. One, many of us have good ideas and some of us have good intentions, but that is not enough to make adequate, effective, and fair public policy. We have to really not only talk to the people who agree with us, but we also must have some communication with the people who may disagree with us, because those arguments can also make our legislation stronger and have the opportunity for us to craft legislation that will get to multi-sides of an issue, multi-perspectives of an issue. I want, for example, my son and sons of people who look like me to be safe when they engage with police. My son is a 37-year-old computer science engineer. You don't know that when he gets stopped by the police. You just know, I just know that as his mother, I want him to make it home. I want the same for my son as other people want for their sons. I also want the same for the police officer who lives across the street from me. He is a good person. He has a wife and a family, and I hope that after his shift, he also makes it home safely. So I believe that working on public policy, I need to make sure that the police officer has been trained in being anti-bias, understanding what bias is, and to make sure that he is making decisions on making a stop that will, one, have him engage in whatever the police policy is safely, have him engage with the person who he stops safely, and make sure that they both get home after the encounter. There are some things I can do for public policy to make that happen. And that is what I try to do when I work on policy for the Washington State Legislature. It is not always easy. I don't think that if it was, we would have the people that we have in the legislature, but I think it is very important for all of us, no matter what work we are doing, if we want to talk about equity, that we first define the term in the way that it will most affect a positive outcome for people, and really understand what it is that we're trying to do when we're creating policy. Thank you.
Thank you, Representative Intiman. I'm getting feedback. Are you guys, you're good? Awesome. All right. Thank you so much, Representative Intiman. I think you had some really great points. What I heard there is that it's important when we're making policy that we talk to the people that those policies will affect, and you are a trusted messenger in that. And so I appreciate that. I did notice that there is a few comments in the chat that I want you to just take a look at, because you asked some really great, poignant, direct questions, and those questions have been answered in the chat for anyone that wants to look at that. But again, I think it's important that you brought up another thing, the difference between or the separation between equity and equality, and those are two totally. This presentation or this summit is really about solutions, right? So you talked about public policy, what it takes to make that happen. And so it is my pleasure to introduce our next presenter, and he is Andre Taylor of Not This Time. And I'm going to go ahead and pass it over to Andre.
Hi, everyone. It's a pleasure of being here. I have a video to play for you that is kind of self-explanatory. My organization, Not This Time, was founded in 2016 after the death of my brother, Shay Taylor. We, long story short, led Washington State in the country, and Washington being the first and only state with a police accountability law with Initiative 940. We did that by creating the largest people of color coalition in the history of this state. And I'm glad that Deborah was just on, because she was so integral part of helping build that process by bringing Adam Smith and others into this movement from the very, very beginning. And so, you know, I just let you guys see the video and see some of the work that we've done and what we're trying to do. Go ahead, Preston, please.
My brother, Shay Taylor, was shot and killed in February of 2016. He was stopped by 2 Seattle police officers. Within 9 seconds, they shot him. The community was in an uproar. What we saw on that video was an unjustified shooting.
I sat down with the chief of police, and I told her something that I know that she wasn't prepared for. I told her, I says, you know I can't bring my little brother back, but I'm still willing to work with you so that we can reduce the incidences of violence in the community.
the inquest hearing was so dehumanizing. It was just another experience that we went through after his death, after him being demonized in the media.
When developing Not This Time, I said that if it's in my power, another family will never have to go through what we went through. We created this space for families to come to. We would put attorneys around them immediately, and then we would put other family members like ours that had gone through this process for support. And it was something that was really life-changing and life-affirming.
My cousin, her name was Charlene Lyles. A friend of ours reached out to Andre Taylor to come and try to, support the family and give us some kind of guidance on how to deal with all this. Andre made it possible for us to just get out there and speak about her and let them know that we know that was a life that shouldn't have been taken, and not only not taken in front of her 4 children.
Billy was not a criminal. Billy was not a threat to anybody, but he was killed within 53 seconds of a police officer showing up on scene. Pierce County Sheriff's Department started making false statements and we didn't know what to do. Andre said we need to fight back and tell our side of the story. Without an organization like Not This Time, our voices would not be heard.
I'm not gonna just sit back. Families out here are not just gonna stop with no kind of response or no kind of accountability for what happened to our loved one.
They messed with the wrong family. We were definitely gonna fight for change and fight for justice. And that's what we did.
Washington State, before we launched the initiative and changed the state law, had the worst police accountability law in the nation. By the time that we had launched Initiative 940, every single one of those families that came from different backgrounds connected everybody together.
Washington State voted and passed the law. Washington State had said it's time for accountability.
As I look at the organization today, there's all sizes, shapes, ages, and colors. And so it's a good mix. Everyone is welcome. What Andre has really embraced is to identify what your gift is. And how can you bring your gift to the organization? What is your particular genius? Bring that to the table.
Everybody wants to do something. People are outraged. They just don't know what to do. Come join us, come to a meeting. Everyone can give something back. We're excited to have you see what we've done and where we're going and the change that we're going to make.
No more families is going to go through what we had to go through.
The thing that has happened to our family, there's no filling that hole. But the efforts that we put into helping support organizations like De-Escalate Washington and Not This Time to bring about legitimate, real change is very impactful.
If you want to see change, you got to get on board and help fight for the changes. Our voices are important.
It's a healing process for me to do the work, to know that we're going to get justice, not only for my son, but for other people that's coming along. And that brings me healing. Hey, Shay, you did it, son. You started the movement.
Thank you so much, Andre. Really appreciate it. Zenobia, are you able to jump on? I think you were going to maybe address some of the things in the chat before we open the voting.
Yes, hopefully you all can hear me. And so I did want to do that. And it's so funny, right? We talk about this word equity, and I passed by something so fast and said, oh, just read it in the chat. What if they couldn't read it? What if they couldn't find it? What if they're using a device where it's not there? And it wasn't until someone brought that to my attention. So I just want to say that we have good intentions, right? And sometimes we go right past those. And so I know that, you know, in my heart, I don't want to leave anyone out, and I want everyone to have those answers. And so how quickly something can be done that looks like it's unequitable. And I just don't want to be in that space. So I think whoever that was, because now I can't see it in the chat, whoever that was that brought that to my attention, that I should probably read those just in case everyone couldn't see it. So this was in reference to the question asked about using the term Sherpa for a program in PEN. And so the answer from their CEO, Executive Director, Andrea, is we reached out, PEN reached out to Sherpa families in the US and abroad. Every single person we spoke to gave us their blessing and said it was an honor to be associated with a program that's going to do so much good. Also, we intentionally use the lowercase of Sherpa because it means guide, while uppercase Sherpa means is a surname. So that was the answer to the first question. The second question related to equity as relates to internet access and devices. It says, we have a parallel program with another nonprofit partner that we're launching to provide hardware and broadband access to people who need it. We also currently partner with the FCC, to get free broadband to cancer patients and families. We agree with you 100% that there are two issues to be addressed. One, access to hardware and broadband, and two, digital literacy training and support. So those were to answer those questions from PEN. Also in the chat, multiple presenters today have referenced digital access and literacy. It says, I'd like to let you know that about a free available service at King County Library Systems. Digital navigators help anyone understand the various programs for subsidized broadband access and appropriate devices. So they can get the right kind of access for them. We also provide basic digital literacy support. One-on-one appointments are available by phone or virtual meeting. Visit, and the website is here, kcls.org/computer-help to learn more. So there's some information there where you can have some free services. And then I know there was an answer, I'm going to find it. There was also a question related to our student group, our winners from 2020. So just give me 1 second, Andrea, and I will find that. I don't see it. I don't want to hold us up on voting, but I will find it and I will make sure that I bring it to the broader community. But we don't want to hold you up. So I'll go ahead and pass it over. And I just want to say again, thank you to Andre and his family and everyone that kind of put that video together. It was definitely hard for me to watch. I saw a lot of people in that video that I know. I also have a Black husband and a Black daughter and a Black son. And so I just empathize with anyone going through that. I actually lost my own mother to gun violence at the age of 7. And so I get the impact that that has on a family. And so for that, I just kind of extend my heart and appreciate you and allowing us to kind of feel that and be in that moment with you guys. So with that, Andrea, back to you.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zenobia. And yes, thank you so much to Andre for that powerful pitch presentation. And now the time is 12:40 and we are ready to open the voting. So everybody has a chance to vote on what is the number one solution to barriers that we face today from our community members. We have facing homelessness. We have the Patient Empowerment Network, and then we have Not This Time. So again, focusing on a solution to policy, a focus on solution to housing, and a focus on solution to healthcare. So that voting will be open until 12:45. And while we are tabulating those votes, I did want to just go into the Q&A section. So we don't have a lot of time kind of built in for Q&A for this particular event. If you have a question, you can feel free to go ahead and type it into the Q&A here on Zoom, and I will do my best to get that to our panelists and try to facilitate a quick Q&A in the next 4 minutes that we have left. I did notice that earlier in the event, Council Member Kate Kruller from Tukwila did have your hand raised. I'm wondering if you have a question, if you wanted to go ahead and type that into the Q&A so I can facilitate that at this time, please feel free to do that. Anything else? Any other questions? Happy to facilitate. And again, thank you all so much for being here. Perfect. And I'm seeing that there is also, in the chat from our state senator, Karen KAISER, just offering her thanks to Kent, Renton, and the Southside Chambers for this webinar and the presentations and the program, thanking us for this substantive, community conversation. Really appreciate that. Yes, it's so important for us to have these conversations in, with, and for our community. Really appreciate that. Thank you. And Zenobia, I don't know if you were able to find that answer for our Student Connections program, but if you did, you can certainly, just chime in. Again, while we're voting, again, based on popular vote, the winning solutions will receive a membership to all 3 chambers. So you heard our winners from last year talk about how they met with us monthly. We provided that technical support to help them get, the idea up and off the ground, so that they were able to go from, idea solution to idea reality. We talked a lot about how intentions are not as important as actions, and being really present and focused on our actions is a huge piece to that. And again, along with that support, they will also receive, all of the other, benefits and resources, that the chamber membership, provides, again, in Renton, in Seattle Southside, and in Kent. And I do see a question here in the chat I'm going to get to. This is directed, I think, towards Representative Entman. You made a good point about racism, specifically toward Black people. So many of our federal, state, and local policies being developed to improve equity are for BIPOC and other underserved populations, but not specifically Black Americans. Should our policy focus on that? Deborah Entman, I'm wondering if you might be available to answer that question live.
Yes, thank you for posing the question. And I think it's very important that we do specifically focus on Black African American people. We have a history of chattel slavery in this country that started in approximately 1619. But there is a history of Black people in this country before they came here as enslaved individuals. So we have to ask ourselves what happened. Many things happen. There is a really good book called My Own Ground that you can look at, and you can look at the history of the Black people in America before we decided that we were going to bring enslaved people over here to work for free. In that change, what we saw was a systematic adoption of a policy that said Black people were less than white people. And the people in between, specifically Indigenous people, Asian people, and some people from other countries, were seen as, quote unquote, white adjacent. They might have been treated poorly, but they were not treated and discriminated against in the same way that Black African American people were. After chattel slavery ended, we continued to have freed Black people in this country. What we don't know about the history of this country, we should know. And that includes that once formerly enslaved people were allowed to, quote unquote, be free, many of them were murdered at the hands of Americans through groups that include the Ku Klux Klan, and the local police, because there were simply too many people that caused the wages to go down. So there's labor has a big influence on this. But what we do need to be able to talk about and be honest about is when we are talking about discriminatory practices, most of those practices had to do with people who you could identify easily. And Black people were identifiable very easily. So if we are going to talk about repair, if we are going to talk about reparations, if we are going to talk about equity, we first have to be honest about the discrimination, the systematic discrimination in which African American people experience in the past and still experience today. We cannot change something if we aren't willing to honestly take a look at it, see that it is wrong, and make account for the wrong that has been done to a group of people. So yes, I do think we need to specifically look at discrimination that has happened against Black African American people.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Representative Entenmann. Really appreciate that. I'm just going to count down the final 10 seconds here for voting for our favorite solution today. Just to say out loud that our chambers will continue to work with these other organizations and solutions to continue to combat the barriers facing equity within all of our communities. So we have 10 seconds left to vote. 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and now voting is closed. Thank you so much. So we can go ahead and share those results with everybody. If I could have chamber staff do that. And Diane, you have the honor of announcing our winner for our 2021 Pacific Northwest Economic Equity Summit.
I do. Thank you very much, Andrea, and thank you to all of our participants and our presenters today. It is an absolute honor to work with all of you and to learn more about the work that you are all doing in the capacities of which you serve. Based upon the presentations today, and they are, again, these are all amazing organizations that are doing incredible work stemmed with beautiful intentions in providing equity and approach, accessibility, compassion, and dignity in policy, and addressing some of our most basic human needs of healthcare and shelter and human rights. I am honored and pleased to say that based upon the vote today, Bernard Troyer from Housing and Facing Homelessness and the Block Project. The popular vote today was, it was close, was to uplift and that your solutions and your approach in providing a roof and bringing people together and closer and separating those divides is selected today. And Burns, thank you for the work that you do. I bring attention to the fact that there are many decision makers, policy makers, change makers that are in attendance today. And you have the opportunity, not just with Facing Homelessness, but with all of the organizations that you've heard from today, to uplift and empower and bring voice to the solutions that have been presented. Feel free to reach out to all of these organizations. Municipal leaders, think about the presentations that have been, you have heard today. For example, are there ways and policies that you can change in your city and the areas that you provide leadership in? I know in Renton, I can speak to, we have an accessory dwelling unit policy that we're looking at and approaching to make accessory dwelling units, to make solutions such as Facing Homelessness more viable option that we can embrace as communities. So think about the things that you've heard today, take them back to your communities, take them back to your colleagues, and have those conversations, which are often hard or courageous conversations, but they're the conversations that we need to have to start making change.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Diane. Oh, yep. Thank you so much, Diane. So I have the pleasure and the honor. I know, programming like this is just not possible without our sponsors and also without people who are engaged in this conversation, who are willing to put action to the narratives that we spoke about here today. So I just appreciate you all for being here today. I want to start by thanking our sponsors, KAISER Permanente, AJAC, which is the Aerospace Joint Apprenticeship Committee, the City of Tukwila, Highline College, Multi-Service Center, and South King Media. And of course, again, thank you to all of the attendees that are here today for making time. I am sure you all are zoomed out and can't wait to get back and in the community and be able to hug and shake hands with folks. And so we as a chamber are looking forward to that as well. And just thank you so much for the different solutions that were presented with us today. We know that when there is an issue, it is best to go to the person that is closest to the issue to help make that, to turn that issue around. And so we appreciate you today. We appreciate all of our pitch presenters, and then just working with, Renton Chamber and Seattle Southside Chamber has been an absolute pleasure to bring this work together and have this conversation. And we look forward to, going to our 3rd annual Pacific Northwest Equity Summit. So with that being said, I will turn it over to you, Andrea.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Zenobia. And again, thank you, everyone. We so value our partnership. Again, founded on the belief that we're better and stronger together. So it's so great to work with our neighbor chambers that share our philosophy that the modern Chamber of Commerce brings together businesses and the community to create dialogue around the most important issues that impact our daily lives and those of our neighbors. By being here today, you are an agent for equitable change, and your work doesn't stop here. Let's continue to support one another in the pursuit of meaningful and compassionate solutions in order to create a more equitable and just King County. If you're willing and able, please support our work. Any donation helps us to keep our nonprofits thriving and strong. Thank you for helping us in our work. Again, have a wonderful day, and thank you so much for being here.